you're going to be surrounded by really exceptional people. I thought the biggest thing that Stanford gave me was the ability to interact with these amazing people. And that really opened my eyes as to what is possible. I could dream much bigger. I could do much more.
We have like a lot of flexibility. So it depends on what classes I have, and I can have different timetables. So even I, just do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do. And so I think that's definitely something that BITS allows us to do, which I think is really great. Hey, welcome back everyone. I'm Ishan Sharma, and with me today on this podcast episode is Rahul Pandey. Rahul did his bachelor's from Stanford in computer science, did his master's from Stanford in CS itself, and he is currently teaching students in Stanford. He's a Stanford lecturer, and in this video we just talk about the differences of studying in US versus studying in India, in particularly BITS Pilani campus that I am a part of. Okay, so yeah, I think this would be great for two reasons. Okay, number one, if you want to learn about what it feels like to be studying in foreign universities, then you can definitely watch this video. And number two, if you are confused if you should be doing your master's in computer science or in some other field, then you should definitely watch this video. He basically shares why did he chose to do master's in computer science from Stanford itself. Okay, this would be an amazing episode, and the second part of this episode is also coming up, in which he shares his journey of how he sold a startup in Silicon Valley, and he's currently working at Facebook as a senior software engineer. Okay, so I hope you will enjoy this video. Make sure that you watch it till the very end. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with your friends if they want to know about studying in foreign universities versus studying in India. And let me know in the comment section below what do you think about this video. Also, you can take a look at Rahul's YouTube channel where he talks about Android development. So I will also be linking that in the description. But with that said, let's get started with today's podcast episode. Everyone, welcome back to one more episode, and today with me I have Rahul, and we'll be talking about just his experience studying at Stanford, a few questions that a lot of you have if you are thinking of studying abroad. We'll just be comparing it with my own college, which is BITS Goa, and we'll just be seeing what happens in both of the two colleges and the experience of studying at two different places around the world. Okay, so Rahul, welcome to the channel, and how are you doing there? Good morning.
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's bright and early here in California. I'm doing great.
Awesome. All right, let's get started with the first question that I see like a lot of videos on YouTube where it's like college reaction videos in which they just open up their emails and they're like, oh my God, I got accepted to this, college. I did not get accepted to this college. What was your experience like when you were checking for your emails and when you got to see that you got accepted at Stanford?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely seen a bunch of those college reaction videos too. I think when I got into college and I got into Stanford, back then, I think the college reaction videos on YouTube wasn't a thing yet. I'm a bit too old for that. But yeah, I mean, I think
What year was that? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I got into Stanford in 2008 and I attended, I applied to college in 2008 and I attended Stanford in 2009.
Right, so, around the time of the crash.
Yeah, exactly. It was actually a very scary time with the kind of Great Recession and everything. But yeah, I think my approach to college admissions was, I think, pretty like methodical in the sense that if you apply to any of these I applied to like 10 of the top schools in the country, in the US. And my mentality was always that, like your admission rate into any of these schools is going to be 4%, 5%, 6%. It's very low. And of course, you should put your best foot forward and try and create a compelling packet to make sure that you get accepted. But at the end of the day, there is some luck involved. And that really comes down to, hey, does your story resonate with the admissions officer? Does the school want someone of your profile for that particular year? And so my mentality was always, let me apply for the top 10 schools. And if there's a 10% chance that I get into any one of the schools, then the chance that I get rejected from all of them will be only about 35%. And that's pretty good. I'll get into at least one of them with a pretty high probability. And so my really top choice was actually Caltech in Southern California. My brother had attended there. So that was the school I really, really cared about. So when I got the admissions letter from Stanford, I was of course happy, but at that point I was okay, I'm going to for sure go to Caltech. And it wasn't until I visited both Caltech and Stanford that I really kind of figured out that Stanford was a better choice for me.
What were your parents like? Were they like really pushing you to get into the top colleges? What were their mentality at that point?
Yeah, I think their mentality was pretty similar to mine, which is that like I had worked hard in high school. I had done what I could in terms of getting grades, getting recommendations, writing a essay, which I thought was compelling. But there was a lot that I couldn't control. And so I think both my parents and I, we were both kind of on the same page that, you know, apply to Princeton, Stanford, Caltech, MIT, and then see where you land. And then once you're in, then you can start to think about, okay, what do I like more or not? But if you have your heart set on one particular school and you say, I only want to go here, I think that can set you up for a lot of disappointment if that school doesn't work out for whatever
Yeah.
reason.
Makes a lot of sense for me because I always had this target in mind that I would want to get into the IITs, and that obviously didn't end up
Yeah.
happening. So I had to settle up for BITS. But anyways, it was just a great experience. I think being at BITS is also a really good thing. But yeah, let's talk about your college experience at Stanford. Once you got accepted, what was the complete experience studying at Stanford? And yeah, let me know about that.
Stanford, I'm so happy that I attended Stanford. I feel like the thing about Stanford and pretty much any good school is that the you're going to be surrounded by really exceptional people. Um, and so I'm a big believer in a saying that you're the average of the five people around you. And I think the really cool thing about Stanford is if you pick any random five people in your student body, they're
Yeah.
going to be really amazing people in some way. And so you're going to end up kind of by osmosis, ending up also amazing in some attribute or some characteristic. And so I feel like the biggest thing that Stanford gave me was the ability to interact with these amazing people. And that really opened my eyes as to what is possible. I don't just have to have a normal day job where I go 9 to 5. I could dream much bigger. I could do much more. And the people around me were living proof that that was possible.
How amazing, like how what was the profs like, what were the professors like, and what were the classes like? Did you enjoy going to the classes? Or because like what happens in my college in BITS is that I hate going to the classes because they're pretty much the same thing. There's just a old professor teaching the same concept from the last 20 years. And so I'd rather just to learn it from some other source like YouTube videos and put that time into just meeting with alumni. And that's something that we'll be talking about in this video as well. But that's what I thought of doing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like there were definitely some classes at Stanford that, no one liked. And it was kind of what you're describing, which is that you go in and it's very theoretical, very dry. And you feel like I could have much better learned this from YouTube or from some other source. But I think Stanford also had a lot of project-based classes. And what I mean by that is they wouldn't give you a homework assignment. Instead, they would give you a problem. They would say, okay, here is what you're trying to build. Like, here's the problem you're trying to tackle. You figure out what to build. And I feel like those were some of my favorite classes where you weren't just handed the code, like the project to build. It was much more about being creative and talking with other people about what even should you build, and then working on a team to build it. And that felt so much more practical to what I do right now as an engineer every day. So I felt like there were a lot of classes like that, which were much more applied, and it forced you to interact and become creative. And those served me really well.
You're talking about how the projects are relevant to what you were doing right now as an engineer. Just want to know, like, in the complete degree, how much of that was really applicable to what you do day to day in your life as a Facebook engineer?
Yeah, this is a great question because I feel like there's so much of education in general, which isn't really applicable to what you do every day. I would say like more than 90% of what I learned, I don't use at all right now. But I think that there's still a ton of value in learning that just because it kind of molds your way of thinking.
Okay.
And there's a general kind of skill of how do you take a problem and decompose it and then figure out how to tackle each of those smaller problems. And that's like a fundamental part of engineering because you have a large
problem solving.
break it down. Yeah, problem solving. And so I feel like a lot of, like, for example, I took a bunch of math classes when I was at Stanford, and I use very little math in my day to day, but I think that general analytical ability of taking a problem and figuring out how to break it down and tackle each part of that problem is extremely valuable, even if I'm not doing linear algebra or multivariable calculus on a day-to-day basis.
I think that definitely makes a lot of sense. What was your typical day look like at Stanford when you were just, studying over there in your bachelor's as well as in your master's?
Right. I think, yeah, it depends a lot on when we're talking about in my kind of Stanford journey. I'll give you kind of an example, maybe from the end of my undergraduate experience. So I was at Stanford for 5 years. I did 4 years undergrad, and then I also started working concurrently during the end of my undergraduate on the master. And so I stayed around for one extra year to do a master's. So I was there for 5 years total. And so toward the end of my Stanford career, most of my classes became more project-based rather than homework-based. And so I would say my typical day was typically I would wake up pretty late, like most computer science students. I would wake up much
Yeah.
later. I'd get up like at 10 or 11, and then I
Mm-hmm.
would bike or I would cycle to class just because Stanford is so big that you can't really walk everywhere. It would just take too long. I would attend lectures live. I always tried to attend lectures live, even if they were recorded, just because I felt like if I watched the recording, I would always kind of get distracted. I would be watching YouTube on the side. I would be doing other things while watching lecture. And so I
Yeah.
always made an effort to attend lecture live.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then during the day, I would almost always be meeting up with people. Like for 2 or 3 hours during the middle of the day, I would go to the engineering quad and meet up with my project partners to figure out what to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And then for lunch and dinner, I would just have them on campus because there are a ton of dining halls on campus, and Stanford's kind of like a bubble. So I wouldn't really ever leave campus, or it would be very rare that I left campus. And
Mm-hmm.
then in the evening, I would usually follow up with maybe 3 or 4 more hours of homework or just studying back in my dorm. And then in the fall quarter, which is like September, October, November, like those were the 3 recruiting months at Stanford. So during
Mm-hmm.
those 3 months, almost every day, I would have either half an hour or 1 hour of a phone call with an alumni or a recruiter to figure out, okay, what are the different opportunities out there that I could apply to? What does the process look like? So that was kind of my typical day. A lot of studying, a lot of meeting up with people to talk about problem sets and projects. And then occasionally I played a bunch of sports. Like I was involved in tennis club,
Mm-hmm.
frisbee, and soccer. So I played those a couple times a week as well.
Interestingly, I don't know about other colleges in India, but specifically for BITS, I think that's exactly what I do every single day in BITS as well. We
Nice.
have like a lot of flexibility. So it depends on what classes I have, and I can have different timetables. So even I, just do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do. And so I think that's definitely something that BITS allows us to do, which I think is really great. It has definitely learned a lot from MIT and, US universities. So yeah, that's definitely something that I do. Talking about alumni that you just mentioned, how do you connect with your alumni in Stanford? Because again, the alumni network is just amazing at Stanford. Similar to and like a smaller version of that we have in BITS campus, in which recently we had this big meet in which the top people who have been like 90s graduates and all that, they took part into this event and they came to BITS again to just share their journeys, whatever they've been doing, and that was really amazing, right? So that is how we got to interact with our seniors, with our alumni, and we got to take the numbers, and then that turned on to us pitching them for investments or something of that whenever we had some startups. What was your experience like talking to your alumni?
Sure. Mm, and yeah, like you mentioned, I think the Stanford Alumni Network is pretty amazing, and there's a ton of really accomplished and helpful Stanford alumni, not only in California, which is where I am, but also across the country and across the whole world. Um, So there's a program at Stanford called Stanford Alumni Mentoring, SAM. And the idea of that was similar to what you're describing, which is you get paired up with an alumni who graduated either 5 years ahead of you or maybe 50 years ahead of you. Kind of you pick what kind of profile who you want to get paired up with. And the idea was that you talk to them on a weekly or monthly basis to figure out what are they doing now? What advice do they have for you if you want to end up doing something similar to what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and really learn from their experience. And so I did that I did that I think with 2 or 3 alumni mentors, and it was amazing every time just to kind of get a very different perspective about how Stanford is different now compared to when they graduated.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the people who I got paired up with helped me to land an internship. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there was a very direct correlation between the alumni advice and guidance and actually landing a job. So I feel like it was a pretty strong connection. And I think so many people are able to benefit from that.
Tell me, what was your motivation to take up masters in computer science? And a follow-up question that I just have out of curiosity: do you think it's worth it for someone to take up a master's degree, or even like a bachelor's degree in computer science, if all they want to do is to just learn to code? Which, we have coding boot camps as well. We have these online courses as well. Is it still relevant to pay like the huge fees that we end up taking a lot of debt as well? So what do you think? What is your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And this is a question I get a lot on my channel as well, of like, should I be pursuing further studies or just pass out after a bachelor's and try and find a job? And I think the answer is that it depends. And that's not a very like concrete answer, but I think it really does depend on your circumstance. So I'll tell you about my situation. I was actually, so the reason I wanted to do a master's were two things. One is that after 4 years at Stanford, I felt like there was so much more in the computer science department at Stanford that I still hadn't learned. There were so many classes that were really interesting that I just never had taken because I didn't have time. So one big reason I wanted to stick around for one more year was just so I could learn about these subjects that I hadn't had time for. And the second reason, which I think is actually the bigger reason, was that I felt that I hadn't properly taken advantage of the amazing faculty and professors at Stanford during my first 4 years there. If you go to a place like Stanford or any kind of top university, the professors who you interact with are amazing. They are literally some of the best people in the world doing what they do. So whether it's talking about security or data mining or machine learning at Stanford, they're one of the best people in the whole world doing that. And just because I was so busy with recruiting and just trying to pass out of my classes, I didn't really do that properly as undergrad. And so during my 5th year at Stanford, during the master's, I actually applied for a research position. And that was my first time deeply interacting with the lab and the academic side of Stanford. And so that was a really
part did you work on? What exact topic were you working on in your master's? I'm just curious.
Right. So I was actually part of a lab which was called SNAP, which was basically doing social network analysis. So how does information get propagated in a social network? How does something become viral? So actually a really interesting kind of topic about how does data get propagated? How do people hear about different things? And it turns out that the work that we did in that lab turned into a startup. And so my professor started a company, and I was like a founding engineer there. And that turned into my first job out of college. So from my perspective, it was very worthwhile to spend one extra year at Stanford because I was able to cultivate a very deep relationship with this faculty. And that actually turned into a kind of a hot startup that I joined, and that kind of propelled my career going forward. So I think for me, it was certainly worthwhile. And the other thing that was also really great about my experience was that if you do a research assistantship, which is what I did at Stanford, they'll cover your tuition and they'll give you a stipend. So in fact, for me, there was no debt or there was no fee to pay because I had it completely covered by my job.
Yeah.
So I feel like from that perspective, it was totally worthwhile.
Yeah.
I think for the normal kind of, if you're applying from India or if you're applying from another university and you have to pay a large fee, I think it does become a bit trickier because financially speaking, if you go out and get a job at a large company, the amount of compensation increase that you get if you have a bachelor's versus a master's isn't going to justify the cost of spending 2 years in the master's program. So I feel like unless you need the master's in order to come to the US or in order to really improve your job prospect, I would say it's not worth it financially. But from the experience standpoint or from the kind of learning standpoint, it could very well be worthwhile. That was kind of the experience for me, and then you should definitely do it.
And what do you think about the importance of bachelor's degree in a computer science field versus coding boot camps and other online courses?
Right. I feel like there definitely is. So with coding bootcamp, I think that there are a lot of really good ones out there, and they can get you to get the practical skills very, very quickly. So rather than spending 4 years in a program, you could learn a lot of that in maybe 1 year or even less than that.
Yeah.
I think that what the computer science program gives you is a credential, which is in general more respected across the industry. Like people can just say, okay, I know this person has like a solid foundation because they went to a proper 4-year program. I think credentials become less and less important if you can prove out your knowledge and your skill in another way. For example, if you have a portfolio of published apps, if you have a portfolio of different websites that you've built, then I think it doesn't really matter if you went to a random college, right? Because you've proven that you have the skills to build out whatever you want to build.
Right.
I think that if you go the bootcamp route or like the learn everything on your own route, I feel like you want to make sure that you learn the fundamentals also. So data structures and algorithms and some of the more theoretical parts of computer science, because that's what I have found when I interview candidates. The bootcamp folks are often missing the more theoretical side, which you want to kind of have some familiarity with, so you're not kind of
like
left behind.
Operating systems and DBMS and all that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I don't think you need to like implement your own compiler or own operating system, but if you are doing the bootcamp route, you should at least have some of the terminology in your head so you can talk and figure out what questions to ask if you ever encounter that on your job.
So yeah, guys, that is the complete episode. This is the first part. The second part will also be coming, where he shares his journey into Silicon Valley, how he sold his startup, and how he is currently working at Facebook, what was his interview preparation like, and all of those things he will be covering in that episode that will be coming soon. So stay tuned for that. And also let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about this episode? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Do you want to see more episodes on such topics? Let me know in the comment section below. I just wanted to experiment and see how it goes. If you want to get in touch with him, I will be linking his social handles in the description. Have a look at them and also take a look at his YouTube channel. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure that you subscribe to this channel, like this video, and comment and let me know what you think about this. And also you can follow me on Instagram at Ishan Sharma 7390. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day ahead, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.